Those who are cheerleading Tommy Robinson are interested in justice. They're supporting a man who went to prison for nearly collapsing a grooming case, a gang grooming case. These are people who are trying to get some kind of vicarious thrill from street violence that people like Tommy Robinson promoted. And those attacking Jess Phillips, who I'm proud to call a colleague and a friend, not protecting victims. Jess Phillips has done 1,000 times more than they've even dreamt about when it comes to protecting victims of sexual abuse throughout her entire career. And so just as I took on the criminal justice system and the institutions when I was chief prosecutor, I'm prepared to call out this for what it is. We've seen this playbook many times, whipping up of intimidation and threats of violence, hoping that the media will amplify it. Jess Phillips does not need me or anybody else to speak on her behalf. But when the poison of the far right leads to serious threats to Jess Phillips and others, then in my book, a line has been crossed. I enjoy the cut and thrust of politics, the robust debate that we must have, but that's got to be based on facts and truth, not on lies, not on those who are so desperate for attention that they're prepared to debase themselves and their country. So this government will get on with the job of protecting victims, including child sexual abuse, mandatory reporting, accelerating the processes. But what I won't tolerate is this discussion and debate based on lies without calling it out. What I won't tolerate is politicians jumping on the bandwagon simply to get attention, when those politicians sat in government for 14 long years, tweeting, talking, but not doing anything about it. Now so desperate for attention that they're amplifying what the far right is saying. So that's what I say about Jess Phillips. Thank you.
Keir Starmer's statement is a masterclass in political deflection and virtue signaling, a transparent attempt to shield himself from legitimate criticism while taking aim at easy targets like Tommy Robinson and the so-called fair right. By reducing a deeply complex and emotionally charged issue, child grooming gangs and institutional failures, to a diatribe against a fringe figure, Starmer not only misses the point but also insults the intelligence of the British public. His self-righteous tone and repeated insistence on his moral superiority do little to mask the glaring failures of leadership and action during his time as Director of Public Prosecutions and now as a political leader. Starmer's smug defense of Jess Phillips, while lavishing her with exaggerated praise, reeks of political opportunism rather than genuine concern for victims. Instead of addressing the systemic issues that have allowed grooming gangs to operate unchecked for decades, he deflects criticism onto his opponents, accusing them of lies and attention-seeking. Yet, Starmer conveniently ignores his own party's role in creating the conditions for these abuses to occur, particularly during Labour's years in government when immigration policies and social sensitivities often took precedence over the protection of vulnerable children. What's truly galling is Starmer's attempt to portray himself as a crusader for justice, claiming he took on the criminal justice system during his tenure as chief prosecutor. The reality, however, paints a far less flattering picture. Under his watch, many of the institutions that failed these victims went unchallenged, and the systemic rot that enabled these crimes to flourish remained largely intact. Starmer's refusal to acknowledge these shortcomings, while lecturing others about facts and truth, is nothing short of hypocrisy. Even more insulting is his attack on those who criticize the government's handling of grooming gangs, labeling them as far-right agitators. By lumping legitimate critics together with extremists, Starmer undermines the voices of survivors and advocates who demand accountability His dismissal of their concerns as lies and desperation for attention reveals an arrogance unbecoming of a leader who claims to stand for justice. Starmer's grandstanding, filled with platitudes about protecting victims, is ultimately hollow. His rhetoric is a weak attempt to divert attention from Labour's inaction and his own lack of meaningful solutions. While he postures as a moral authority, he fails to address the root causes of these horrific crimes or offer tangible reforms to prevent them. In doing so, Starmer shows himself to be more interested in political theatre than in confronting the uncomfortable truths that Britain needs to face.
Forgive me for going back on Musk's attacks. You've described what he has been alleging as lies against Jess Phillips. This morning, he said you should be in prison. You're a lawyer. That sounds libelous. Will you take legal action against him?
In relation to, I've said quite a lot about the various lies and misinformation that are put out there. My record is it's open. There was nothing secret about being Director of Public Prosecutions. Every single case I prosecuted went to court, was looked at by a judge. I had an independent inspectorate, had access to every single file of every case anytime he or she wanted, and I was overseen by the Attorney General, which for 3 of the 5 years was a Tory Attorney General. So that record, and so in a sense, rather than me trying to say any more about what I did when I was in office, you can access this material, you know where it is, you know what facts are. But it is an important point that's more, the reason I've emphasised this today is because this isn't about whether I defend myself or my record, frankly. That record is there, you can see it, you can make your own mind up. It is something about the nature of our politics, because once we lose the anchor that truth matters, in the robust debate we must have, then we're on a very slippery slope. And when politicians, and I mean politicians, who sat in government for many years, are casual about honesty, decency, truth, and the rule of law, calling for inquiries because they want to jump on a bandwagon of the far right, then that affects politics, because a robust debate can only be based on the true facts. And that's why this is actually an important point about our politics, not about what anybody may or may not say on Twitter. That actually isn't the main issue. The main issue is, what are politicians here doing to stand up for the things that matter to our democracy and the way that we have robust debate? That's why I want to call this out, because I think it really matters. And it matters not just to me, not just to the Labour Party, but it ought to matter, and it used to matter, to all political parties. And it's a sign of where the Tory party have got to, that we're even having this debate.
Keir Starmer's response to Robert Peston's questioning reeks of self-righteousness and evasive politicking, exposing his inability to address criticism with substance or humility. Instead of tackling the core issue, Elon Musk's accusations and the broader failures surrounding grooming gangs, Starmer deflects by delivering a sermon on truth and integrity, conveniently ignoring the glaring contradictions in his own record. His claim that every single case I prosecuted went to court is a blatant attempt to shield himself from scrutiny, conveniently sidestepping the widespread failures of the institutions he once oversaw. Starmer's reliance on the endorsement of Tory attorney generals during his tenure is laughable at best. It's a weak appeal to authority, designed to distract from the fact that systemic failures under his leadership as Director of Public Prosecutions allowed grooming gangs to operate unchecked for years. His insistence that all records are accessible and transparent does little to address the reality that survivors and critics alike view his leadership as a significant part of the problem, by framing the debate as one about the nature of our politics. Rather than his own accountability, Starmer shows an alarming detachment from the real concerns of victims and the public. Even more galling is Starmer's moral posturing about truth and robust debate. While lecturing others on the importance of honesty, he conveniently ignores the deep-seated mistrust many Britons feel toward the political and legal systems, partly due to his own role in failing to confront uncomfortable truths. His sanctimonious tone, coupled with his dismissal of critics as far-right or bandwagon jumpers, reflects a politician more concerned with deflecting blame than addressing the root causes of institutional failures. Starmer's attempt to paint himself and the Labour Party as bastions of integrity is undermined by his own party's track record on these issues. His implication that the Conservative Party is responsible for the deterioration of political discourse rings hollow when Labour's own governance and policies played a significant role in fostering the conditions for these scandals. By shifting the focus to the Tories, Starmer avoids confronting Labour's complicity and his personal shortcomings. Ultimately, Starmer's response is emblematic of a politician who prioritizes optics over accountability. His lofty rhetoric about truth and democracy rings hollow against the backdrop of his failure to deliver justice during his tenure and his refusal to engage meaningfully with the concerns of survivors and the public. This evasion, wrapped in self-aggrandizing platitudes, reveals a leader who is more interested in preserving his image than addressing the systemic issues that continue to erode public trust in British politics. Thank you for watching. If you have any thoughts or opinions, feel free to share them in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel for more updates, and join us on Telegram for exclusive content and discussions. Your support means a lot.